What's up everyone, welcome back, and to a video that I have had on the back burner for a very long time. I've been wanting to do a challenge of Strange Journey for a while, so originally I was going to do no fusion, but I'm going to be honest, when I finished it, it was a playthrough that I wasn't too proud of. I had all the DLC installed and I used it to do a lot of cheesy stuff that I probably shouldn't have, like increase my demon stats with the DX instances and then get a bunch of free money and EXP with all the drops that you get from the apps included with the DLC, stuff like that. So I'm not going to be allowing anything like that here unless it's deemed absolutely necessary. What I'm going to be doing here is trying to beat the game without buffs. Unlike most JRPGs, buffs in SMT are not only useful, but they actually make or break the game, boss battles especially. One of my most popular videos is beating Nocturne without buffs, and while that challenge was definitely interesting, I haven't thought much about doing it with any other game because Nocturne is designed in a way that it teaches you the importance of buffs. It wasn't until recently that I started thinking about how tough this challenge would be for other mainline SMT games, and what better candidate than Strange Journey. Believe it or not, Strange Journey was my first mainline SMT game, and it was playing this game when I realized that buffs actually make a difference. I won't spoil where in the game that happened, but by the time I started Nocturne, I already knew how crucial buffs were. So, let's go back to Strange Journey and see just how difficult it will be, or if it's even possible, to beat it without buffs. My rules are that I cannot use moves that increase my stats or decrease my opponent's stats. So nothing like Tarukaja, Tarunda, Rakukaja, Rakunda, etc. But this also includes moves that decrease or increase stats as a secondary effect, like Fangbreaker, which is a physical attack that lowers the target's attack. Moves that counter buffs and debuffs, however, like Dekunda and Dekaja, are allowed, and moves that technically can be considered buffs but don't actually increase my stats and or are temporary, like Charge and Concentrate for example, are allowed. Though I don't think I'll be using those moves because they kinda suck in this game. I also don't normally allow New Game Plus, but in Strange Journey Redux, New Game Plus is the only way to play on impossible difficulty. Oh, and also, no password demons, for obvious reasons. Now that the rules have been established, let's start the game. We watch the intro, select the completed save file, choose impossible as the difficulty, and we can begin. After the intro cinematic, we cut to some important looking people having a meeting in a dark room, while a reporter talks about how things aren't going too well in the world right now. While this game never tells you what year it takes place in, it's pretty clear that it's set in the year 2020. There's a mysterious black hole-like thing enveloping Antarctica called the Schwarzwelt. Nobody knows what caused it, but the images on screen are supposedly taken from inside. And now they're sending in a team of soldiers to investigate. We meet our commander, Commander Gore, then Russian Yukari explains what the Schwarzwelt is. And then we get to the name entry screen. I choose Gnarly Doomguy because in this game, it's your last name that's displayed on screen, not your first, and I mean, given the theme of this game, how could I not call my protagonist Doomguy? After that, Hispanic Junpei explains our suits and how to use them, and then we're given a personality test that determines your stat growth. The way stats grow in this game is completely random, but this test is what determines how likely each stat is to increase with every level up. Magic is pretty useless in this game since it's strength that determines the power of your gun attacks, so I want the strength focused build, so I choose the first answer for everything, and that's exactly what I get. After that, we head on into the Schwarzwelt, and what do you know, things don't go according to plan. The ship crashes, and then demons sneak in and start attacking. In a first-time run, these demons would be shown as these blue pixelated blobs, but because demon analysis carries over in New Game Plus no matter what, I get to see what they really are, slimes. With this being the tutorial battle, I beat them easily, then go to sickbay and beat some more. But while we were doing that, some of the crew members got dragged away, and now we have to go rescue them. We get our first encounter where Pixie teaches us how to negotiate and then joins us. We go around looking for all the missing crew members, which are all preceded by a few easy battles. And once everyone's back, we get a transmission from another one of the ships. It's Jimenez, and his ship is being attacked by demons. So we blow up the wall that was blocking the path to the ship, and Gore shows us how awesome he is by taking on a really strong demon all by himself. And he would have killed it had he not fallen for one of the most obvious tricks in the book. So now we have to fight this thing as the first boss. Orius is about as simple as bosses get in this game. In fact, it's not even really a boss, it's just a high-level enemy. It doesn't have a single skill, only a normal attack, but this is one heck of a strong attack because it can kill Doomguy in a single hit from full health. You all already know that I can't use buffs, but even if I could, I wouldn't have access to any unless I was somehow able to recruit a die book, which I would need to be extremely lucky to do. But the point is, without the ability to buff, all I can do is grind. So I grind up to level 4, and that's still not enough. So I grind up to level 5, and now I can finally survive one of his attacks from full HP. And with this, it's pretty easy. It's weak to fire, which is perfect because both Doomguy and Pixie come with fire attacks, and because 3 of my 4 party members are neutrally aligned, each of these attacks triggers a level 2 co-op. And with each of these, I'm doing about 30 damage. Knocker doesn't have any fire attacks, so with him I just guard, and I use Angel to heal when necessary. I just keep attacking with Doomguy and Pixie while guarding with Knocker and healing with Angel, and without too much issue, Arise gets taken out. While we saved Jimenez, Gore doesn't make it.
That's not it, man. It's just the black guy always dies.
So we go back to the ship, Arthur takes over as commander, and now our next course of action is to find a way out of the dungeon. From here, it's pretty straightforward. Irving fits our Demonicas with the Forma Search ability, which we use to find the unlock upgrade so that we can go into the next section of the dungeon. Shortly after you get here, you may notice a Pixie that you can talk to. She'll give you a side quest where all you need to do is give her a bead, and if you do that, she'll reward you with the Pixie Knife. Make sure to do this because, while the Pixie Knife isn't that good of a weapon, it does open up some much more important side quests for you to do later. We trek across the battlefield section of the dungeon where, in addition to the random encounters, there are some sections where we need to beat some enemies as mini-bosses, which are all easy, and then we get to the main boss of this sector, Forax. This guy may look tough. I mean, to me, he doesn't. He just looks like a rejected Star Trek villain, but this boss really isn't hard at all. I'm still neutral aligned, and I come in with a full team of neutral demons, all of whom have an ice attack, including Doomguy, because he's now equipped with the Anderson gun, which allows me to use Ice Shot. With a full party of strong ice magic users of the same alignment, each successful hit triggers a level 3 co-op attack. And in total, this deals about 60 damage with each hit. Now, this being said, I can't actually do this 4 times per turn because he's still pretty strong. Not strong enough to kill anyone in my party in 1 hit, but still strong enough to kill most of them in 2 hits. And he usually moves first too, so I have Earthis heal every turn. This boss is pretty much just a repeating process of him attacking with Miragi, me healing, and then going all out with everyone's Bufu. Toward the end he goes for Gehenna, which inflicts fear on the whole party except for Goblin, but fear is probably the least problematic ailment in this game. Although after that he goes for Horn Frenzy and gets 2 lucky hits on Earthis, which takes him out, but by this point he barely has any health, and on the final turn he goes for Gehenna again, which inflicts fear on Goblin, but this doesn't stop me from finishing him off. So we get our first exotic matter, and now we can move on to the next sector, Sector Boots. This is one of my favorites as it's based on a red light district, but also because it has that weird, vibrant color oil painting aesthetic to it. Now, the demons here give me a bit of trouble at first, due to most of them being much higher level than I am, but it's not long before I catch up. The first part of the main quest here has me find some open spots to place some beacons. We do this no problem, but on the way out, we're stopped by edgy Yukiko. What did I do? Thankfully, we're revived by Demeter, and she takes us to this place called the Womb of Grief, and she wants us to gather some fruit pieces from here. This is the new dungeon that they added in the 3DS remake of Strange Journey, and completing it is going to be necessary in order to get one of the new endings. It's basically this game's version of the Amala Labyrinth. I'm not going to do the first sphere right now, though. I'm going to come back when I'm finished with the current sector, and I'm basically going to do each sphere between every dungeon. So I go back to the ship, and despite me literally just dying, it's back to business as usual. We get a distress signal and start investigating. I also make sure to do this side quest given by 3 Dis in the southeast section of the map. In this quest, they need someone to help calm down Yggdrasil, so they take me to him, and then he freezes time and destroys me. Man, can I go a few minutes without having a near-death experience? But while I'm out cold, someone else comes along and finishes the job for me, and then they congratulate me and give me the Nornir ring, which makes me immune to poison. I didn't really do anything, but I'm not going to complain about free items. We go inside the palace, and while we're in there, we get captured. Big surprise, but inside our cell, we meet Zelenin. We're then taken to Mithras, the master of the palace, and he lets us go, in hopes that we can convince the rest of the crew to join him. Obviously, this isn't going to happen, nor is it an option, so Arthur comes up with a plan to rescue Zelenin and the other captured members by distracting the demons with an attack while we go in and save them. Which we do, but we're captured again. And this time, they don't seem too interested in letting us go. We see that they've been torturing and running all kinds of experiments on the people they've captured, and even though you don't see it, this is some really nauseating stuff they're doing. Keep in mind, this game originally came out on the Nintendo DS, a console that was best known for games like Pokemon and Mario Kart. Fun fact, Strange Journey is one of only 11 games on the DS to get an M rating. But anyway, Norris, who wasn't doing so well earlier, is now turned into a demon thing. I mean, his face just turns green, and it really just looks like he ate too much enchilada last night. Now, we can step in to try to help him, but I just sit back and watch. And now, he has to be fought as a mini-boss. And as far as mini-bosses are concerned, Norris is actually kind of difficult. He has no weakness, and in this game, on impossible difficulty, without help from co-op attacks, your attacks do diddly squat. The only one who is able to dish out any decent damage is Doomguy because of how high his strength is. While Norris himself isn't strong, he only has physical attacks. Without the ability to lower his attack or raise my defense, without the ability to exploit any of his weaknesses, and given how rare physical resistances are this early in the game, there's not a lot I can do. The outcome of this fight is largely dependent on luck, and in the first attempt he decimates my party with a giant slice. I come back with a slightly better team, but it's still pretty difficult. The main reason this fight is difficult is, well, aside from what I already mentioned, he also knows Stun Claw, which, you know, has a chance to stun anyone it hits. However, he actually seems to favor going for Rampage and Giant Slice. Giant Slice is a strong physical attack that hits everyone, while Rampage hits random targets. These attacks alone aren't enough to kill anyone in just one hit, but each of his attacks do a little over half, and it's another case like the Morax fight where I have to heal every single turn. My party's attacks are doing anywhere from 40 to 10 damage each turn, which isn't great, and makes for a very long battle, but at least I'm able to survive. Once Norris gets low enough on HP that he'll die the next turn, he'll go for Last Resort, which I completely forgot about, but look at that. Doomguy survives with exactly 1 HP. That was close, and it sucks that one of my party members died, but this is a case where I'm going to take my victory and run. So, we can't find a way out, but inside we meet the Angel Mastema, who helps us escape. Now, you've probably noticed that my player's text is now red. Yeah, that's because due to the choices I've been making, my alignment is now Chaos, and this is exactly how I want it. If you ask me, in this game the Chaos-aligned demons are far better than the neutral and law-aligned ones. And being Chaos-aligned not only means that these demons will cooperate with me in battle, but they'll also be easier to negotiate with. The only drawback is that you pretty much can't communicate with law-aligned demons, but this isn't too much of a loss, since most law-aligned demons in this game suck anyway. But getting back to the game, the only thing left to do now is head out. But we're stopped by a macabre who needs to be fought as a mini-boss, and holy crap, this is one serious difficulty spike for a lesser mini-boss. Just like Norris, this thing has no exploitable weakness, yet its attacks hit even harder. It has Blight, which is one of the strongest physical skills you can get at this point in the game, and it has a chance to poison. Not Doomguy, thankfully, but the damage dealt by the attack combined with the poison damage is enough to kill most of my party, and just 2 hits is enough to kill Doomguy. This battle is not going to be possible under these conditions. Unfortunately, I forgot to save after the battle against Norris, so I'm going to have to do that fight again. I come back with a much better party this time, and it makes the fight a lot easier. My Makara knows Diorama, and Azumi is resistant to physical attacks. I also have the commander skill Assailment, which increases my party's attack for 1 turn. I know some people are going to argue and say that this is a buff, but it's one of those things I put in the same category as Concentrate and Charge, where it's only temporary, and it doesn't count as a status upgrade, so I'm going to be allowing it. Once I beat Norris, I attempt the macabre fight again, and it doesn't go much better. My attacks are still hardly doing anything, but they're doing more than they were before at least. The strategy is basically the same as before. Attack with everyone except Earthus, who I use to heal, while crossing my fingers and hoping that he doesn't go for Blight. And things go fine until he does. And after this, he pretty much just spams it. Makara and Earthis go down almost immediately, leaving only Azumi and Doomguy standing. Now, aside from the poison effect, Azumi is just eating those blights up, and because I kinda had a feeling it was going to come to this, I gave him Medea so he can heal while Doomguy takes care of dealing damage. Though this doesn't last the entire battle because in order to heal, I need MP, and with Azumi being a physical-focused demon, he doesn't come with a lot. When he runs out, all I can do after that is get as much damage out of Azumi as I can before he dies, while using items to heal. Azumi does go down, and I debate resetting the game, but I decide to stick it out and see if I can clutch the battle. Doomguy has just barely enough HP to survive 2 attacks, which allows me to get off an attack before having to heal. By this point, the enemy is already very low on HP, but I'm also kind of low on items myself. Close to the end, I use my last bead, but I do still have a bead chain, so I use that. But even after that, my attack still doesn't do enough to finish him off. So this last turn depends on whether or not I go first, and I do. I gain 3 levels. That was the hardest boss of the game so far, but I was able to beat it without having to resort to overleveling. So we bring Zelenin back to the ship, where she and Jimenez immediately start arguing like a married couple. I fuse Forax, giving me a full party of Chaos-aligned members, and then with our new demon search app, we can identify that invisible demon that captured us and kill him. Now, the dungeon is pretty straightforward from here, but on the 3rd floor, there is a Harlot who, if you talk to her during a full moon, she'll go crazy and ask for a pomegranate. You have to go look for a Persephone on the 5th floor, who gives it to you, and when you bring it back to Harlot, she'll give you the Resetsu vest, which isn't actually all that great in terms of defense, but does make you immune to both dark and light attacks, which is arguably better, especially for the protagonist. Also on the way up, Jimenez gets into a battle with a demon and befriends Boogaboo. After that, it's not long before we make it to the boss, Mithras, and I am already more than prepared for this fight. Mithras is weak against wind, so I equip Doomguy with the Allah Blaster, which lets him fire wind rounds. With both him and Makara attacking with wind magic and a full party of Chaos-aligned demons, I am doing around 250 damage each turn. Forax and Azumi don't have much in the way of attacks, but they're doing more than their share as healers. For a dungeon boss, Mithras is actually pretty weak. His only attacks are Rampage, which isn't a very good attack, Mabufudine, which normally would be a problem, but he doesn't actually go for it that much, Waking Dream, which is a weak almighty attack that might cause strain, an ailment that really isn't that big a deal, and Light of Order, which is an insta-kill attack that targets whoever has the lowest magic stat. This could be a problem, but again, he only goes for this once, and when he does, it hits Azumi, and this is on the last turn of the fight. After that, I finish him off easily on my first attempt. So once again, we get the exotic matter, and then we arrive at what is easily my favorite dungeon in the entire game, Sector Carina, which is like a weird demonic department store. I mean, this game just has really cool dungeons in general, but this one is easily my favorite, although I'm not gonna start exploring it just yet. First, I want to get some side quests out of the way. There's this one where there's a demon terrorizing the bathroom, so we beat it, and it's one of the easiest fights in the game because it's weak against physical attacks. After that, I head out into the Womb of Grief to clear the first sphere. The Womb of Grief is pretty infamous for its confusing layouts, but the first sphere isn't actually too bad. There are a lot of conveyor belts, but as long as you have a map and pay close attention to it, you'll get through it no problem. The boss at the end is Anahita, who I've never had a lot of trouble with before, but the first few attempts don't go well at all. Anahita specializes in ice attacks, and her Hellish Spurt does a lot of damage to Doomguy. I don't have access to any ice-resisting vests at the moment, but there is one I'm not too far from being able to get. But I do need to get the materials for it from Sector Carina. So I briefly head out into the sector, get the materials, and craft the vest, which nullifies ice attacks. It's not only going to be helpful for Anahita, but it's also going to serve a much more important purpose that you'll see very soon. But for now, I challenge Anahita again, and it goes much better. Anahita, as I said, specializes in ice attacks and is weak against fire. I give Doomguy the strike rifle so that I have a full party of fire attackers, and each successful hit combined with the co-op does around 130 damage. So my entire party working together is able to do a maximum of around 500 damage when they're all able to get off an attack. Besides her ice moves, Anahita's only attacks are Impure Psi, which poisons everyone, and Fangbreaker, which lowers the target's attack. I haven't reached a point in the game where I have easy access to Dekunda or Dekaja, so I kinda just have to live with it for now, but this only hits one party member at a time, so it's not too big a deal. Her main gimmick and her most problematic move though is her Cositus attack, which prevents anyone from using fire moves and strengthens ice moves for 3 turns. There's really no counter for this, but like I said, it only lasts 3 turns, so it's best to just wait it out. The only member of my party that doesn't have some kind of ice resistance is Patrimpas, and her AI can't seem to figure that out. For the first part of the fight, I just spam fire attacks until she goes for Cositus, wait that out, and then start spamming fire attacks again, all while she goes for ice attacks in vain. This fight does not last long at all, and she goes down with little to no issue. So we get the first of the fruit pieces Demeter wanted, along with the damp hair, which allows us to make an app that redirects a co-op attack if a demon that would have been co-op attacked dies, which is good for taking out demons with hard to hit weaknesses. And now it's time to get back to the main dungeon. Carina is actually one of the shorter and easier dungeons in this game, but that doesn't make it any less cool. Shortly after getting there, I have to go to the basement level where there are these hallways where you can't see where you're going, but this is also where you'll find a Jack Frost whose family was just killed and he wants to avenge them. If you give him the Ice Vest, he'll turn into Frost Ace and will give you the Frost Cannon, a very powerful gun that comes with an attack in every element except fire, and it is going to be my best weapon for a good chunk of the game. I also fuse Doppelganger, who is commonly considered one of the best demons in the game because he reflects both physical and gun attacks, with his only weaknesses being to light and darkness, which, if you have Tetraja, really isn't much of a weakness at all. And with me giving him both Meteorama and Recovery Boost, he's going to serve as my main healer. Also on this floor is where we have our first encounter with Horkos, the boss of this sector. Yeah, we just got here and we're already encountering the boss. He's taken over one of the ships and is sucking in everything nearby. There's nothing we can do right now, but we run into Mastema, who offers to help. But we need to bring him a demon of the Wilder race and the Megami race. So that's exactly what we do. Mastema gives us some kind of crystal, which Irving converts into the MK gun. From here, we just chase Horkos around the dungeon and start blasting him with it until he gets separated from the ship. And in there, we find a device that lets us communicate with the Joint Project. They tell us that demons are emerging from the Schwarzwelt and are attacking Earth. We also get a speech from some woman in a white dress who is named Louisa Fair. Louisa Fair. Gee, I wonder who this could be.
Even your name is a dime store joke.
Mephistopheles is such a mouthful of Manhattan, Johnny.
And after that, Horkos attacks the ship. We scare him off with the shield, and he conveniently leaves behind the Forma that lets us phase shift, which is just what we need in order to chase him down and defeat him for good. And he's one of the easiest bosses in the game. For one thing, Horkos has not one, but 2 weaknesses. One to fire and the other to electricity. And everyone on my team, except for Doppelganger, has coverage for that. For Doomguy, I switch back to the strike rifle because the electric move from the frost cannon is multi-target and uses up a lot more MP. With each hit, I'm doing a little over 160 damage in total, which is great. Now, Horkos is decently powerful, but all of his attacks are physical, and none of them are doing enough to kill anyone in the party in one hit, and Doppelganger is easily able to heal most of the damage off. And just in case, I also have Medea on Mithras so he can serve as a backup healer. The only unique non-damaging move that Horkos has is Grocery Run, and what this does is it summons Akata Kirawa next to him. You can try to take it out if you want, but if you do, he's just gonna immediately summon another one, so I don't recommend it. By this point, he's already almost out of HP anyway, and on the next turn, we finish off Horkos and end the battle. As usual, we deliver the exotic matter and head to the next area. Another one of my favorites, Sector Delphinus, which is modeled after a junkyard. But we're actually not going to go into it or the Womb of Grief quite yet. First, we're going to start accepting Anthony's quest. Anthony is a strike team member who keeps falling in love with demons and wants you to scout them out. Right now, we can do all of them up until Gremory, and we won't be seeing him until Sector Grus, which won't be for a while. And yes, I said him. Gremory is a guy. Now, The next section of the Womb of Grief isn't really confusing, but it does require you to walk over a lot of damaging floors, so I highly recommend either the Nurse or Medic app. Before too long, we get to the boss of this sector, who is Ishtar. And Ishtar is the first major boss that gives me any real trouble. She's not only much stronger than the other bosses, but she has attacks that cast ailments and moves that punish targets that have ailments. The ailment that she inflicts is Charm, which is easily the worst one in the entire game. And she has 2 moves that inflict this, and she specializes in wind attacks, and my team isn't exactly built to withstand wind attacks or charm inflicting moves. I'm going to need to remake my party so that it is, but Ishtar also has Berserker God, and a single hit from that is enough to kill Doomguy in 1 hit from full HP. If she doesn't charm everyone and laugh while my party beats itself to death, she's easily able to assassinate Doomguy with a single Berserker God. And if that weren't bad enough, she also knows Hama-on, so yeah, this isn't really gonna work out right now. I mess around with fusion for a bit and fuse both Hypnos and Takemenakata, but I also scrounge up Forma so that I can make the Iron Man vest, which resists physical attacks. I also purchased the Bite the Bullet and Braveheart apps. Bite the Bullet gives everyone the Endure skill for the turn it's used, and Braveheart makes the party immune to debuffs and ailments for 3 turns, and is absolutely essential for bosses like this. With that, I challenge Ishtar again, and yeah, things go much better. Doomguy is now able to take Ishtar's Berserker Gods no problem, and 2 of my 4 party members are resistant to wind. Doppelganger also has Tetraja, which protects my party from her Hama-on, and I can use Braveheart to counter her Frolic and Charm effect of Alluring Squall for 3 turns. Due to the way commander skills work, they recharge after a certain number of turns have passed, and for Braveheart, that's 5, meaning there is going to be a 2-turn period where I'm not protected. Now, if Ishtar does charm 2 or more of my party members, that's pretty much an automatic reset. Even with all the protection and preparation I brought, this is still a largely luck-based boss. All I can do is keep attacking and playing as aggressively as I can, while hoping that she doesn't go for Alluring Squall or Frolic while Braveheart isn't active. 3 or 4 of my party members have electric skills, so I'm at least doing a good amount of damage each turn. My Doppelganger also does have Makarakarn, which can block her Alluring Squall, but this is a pretty costly skill, so I have to use it sparingly. Especially because it's used by the demon that's also my healer. So this whole battle is really just a guessing game. It takes maybe 6 or 7 attempts, and most of these attempts end with a game over due to the party either getting charmed or Doomguy dying to an unlucky attack. But in my successful attempt, she goes for Berserker God on Doppelganger multiple times, and only goes for magic attacks when I have Makarakarn set up. And with that, I'm easily able to take her out. So we get the second fruit piece, and now it's back to work at Delphinus. This place is basically a maze of automatic conveyor belts. It can be frustrating, but as long as you have a map handy, this is actually one of the easier dungeons. Once we get here, we notice that some of the crew members, including Jimenez, are going a little crazy and attacking each other. Apparently, there's a parasite going around that's making them do this. This is similar to what happened with Norris and Sector Boots. So we go there to see if we can find anything, and Mastema gives us the material we need to make the cure. Now, before I go any further, there is a side quest in Delphinus that I want to do. Close to the entrance, there are these doors on opposite sides that take you to either Kresnik or Kudlok, who give you side quests. They both want a weapon to be able to kill each other, and they'll reward you with the vest. You can actually do them both, but I'm just going to help Kresnik because Kudlok's vest isn't all that good. Kresnik wants a Hawthorn Spear, which is kind of hard to get, but there is an easy way to get it. If you go to the room where you first met Mastema in Sector Carina, there will be a dwarf who offers to forge a new weapon for you if you bring him a cursed lance, which I have, so I give it to him, wait 10 moon cycles, get the Hawthorn Spear, give it to Kresnik, and he rewards me with the Bellowbog vest, which has no weaknesses and resists physical attacks. Now back to the main story. I use the material to upgrade the MK gun to cure all the crew members, and the Delphinus parasites exit them in the form of this weird floating, pulsating blob thing. Now I have to chase them around in the upper levels of the sector where they have to be fought as mini-bosses. These bosses are all total jokes. Besides their weak normal attack, they just go for weak single-target ailment moves that rarely ever hit. Despite them having the same model and name and everything, They all have different weaknesses, and in normal first playthroughs, you kinda just have to guess what their weaknesses are. But since this is New Game Plus, and I already have them analyzed in this file, I can already tell what they're weak against, and with the excellent elemental coverage my party has, they do not take long at all to take out. Oh, and that's not all. We run into Commander Gore, whose body went missing earlier, and it looks like he's been possessed by demons. Well, at least they fitted him with a nice outfit. Once the parasites have all been taken care of, they'll converge at that statue you may have noticed. And surprise, this thing is the boss of this sector, and one of the most infamous bosses in the entire game, Ashera. In the first turn of my first attempt at this fight, he goes for Ashera Roga, which casts Rage on everyone except Kinki. Then Doomguy attacks Doppelganger, which gets reflected and he knocks himself out. Ashera Roga casts Rage, which in this game is basically a slightly modified version of Charm. Your allies will attack each other with boosted damage, and there's no way to block it. Even allies that are immune to every ailment like Alilat and Alice aren't immune to Ashera Roga, so this is just another cheap luck boss and there's nothing you can do. At least that would be the case if we were playing the vanilla version. Braveheart, on the other hand, still works against Ashera Roga. I don't know why, but it takes me a few attempts to figure that out, but once I do, this fight is really easy. Ashera is weak against ice, and everyone on my team has an ice skill. With each hit, I am doing an astonishingly high amount of damage. Each attack from my demons is doing around 200 damage after co-op, while Doomguy's attacks are doing about 350, which is insane. I was really worried about what was going to happen after Braveheart wore off, but I didn't even need to be, because by the second turn, he's already down to just a quarter of his HP. And in the following turn, before the entire team even gets a chance to move, Ashera gets taken out. That boss was a lot easier than I was expecting. I'm starting to believe that playing this game without buffs is not only possible, but it might actually be a viable strategy. But again, we're only halfway through the game, so we'll see where things go from here. So we get the exotic matter, get to Sector Eridanus, and the Joint Project tells us that they have a plan to blow up the Schwarzwelt by detonating a bunch of nukes around it. And all we need to do is get out. But getting out of the Schwarzwelt can wait, because we have another level to do in the Womb of Grief. Now, there isn't really anything too difficult about this level, but not long after we enter, we run into edgy Yukiko again. We can't beat her, but you might notice that despite this being on impossible difficulty, escape actually is possible here. Once you escape from Alex the first time, as you walk around in this dungeon, you'll notice these enemies being picked up by your scanner. If you step on any of these spaces, you'll go into battle with Alex again, where you'll have no choice but to escape, but not after taking a couple of hits. That's the gimmick of this dungeon. You have to navigate around in the maze while also avoiding Alex, but the maze itself isn't that hard. Once we get to where we think the boss is going to be fought, we see that Alex already beat us there and took out the boss in the span of a few seconds, though it still looks like it did a number on her, and despite being beat up, she tries to take us on anyway. Now, this is the first real fight against Alex, and it's one of the more gimmicky fights of this game. If I had to compare it to anything, I'd say it's a lot like the fight against Matador from Nocturne because of how evasive she is. Only, the point of that fight was to teach you the importance of buffs. Here, there's not really any way to counter most of her buffs other than to just wait them out. Alex has a wide variety of her own attacks, mostly physical and gun attacks, but also some elemental magic attacks, although she doesn't go for these super often. Her main gimmicky abilities are her evade magic and evade physical moves. What these do is they greatly increase her evasion against magic or physical moves respectively, to the point where I don't even think it's actually possible for her to get hit by these attacks while they're active. This is bad enough, but whenever she dodges an attack, any attack, her skill dodging counter activates, which deals gun damage to whoever's attack just missed. So it's basically a free attack anytime anyone misses her. Right now my party consists of Doppelganger, Gukumats, and Ares. Everyone except Doomguy resists guns, so this isn't actually too big a deal. In fact, it's actually a good thing when Doppelganger misses, because even when her dodging counter activates on him, it still gets reflected, which is kinda funny, but it's still frustrating just because of how high her hit and evasion rate is. Even at everyone's base hit and evasion rate, my attacks only hit like maybe 50% of the time. And when she has evade magic up, there's nothing you can do but wait for it to wear off, because you will not be doing any damage. Especially since physical attacks do absolutely nothing against her. In fact, my attacks aren't really doing much in general, which doesn't help. If that weren't bad enough, she also has a move called Smoke Screen, which lowers the party's evasion rate by 2. Thankfully, Ares has Silent Prayer, which is basically Takunda and Dakaja combined, and is a must-have skill for a no-buffs playthrough. But if she uses this or any of her other evasion skills in the middle of a turn, there's nothing I can do. All I can do is just spam electric attacks, which is her weakness, as much as I can until she goes for Evade Magic. After which, all I can do is wait for it to wear off and then start attacking again, until she goes for it again, and you get the idea. Her attacks aren't actually doing that much damage because of how decked out my team is with its physical resistances. In fact, Gukumatsu here resists everything in the game except darkness, making him the perfect tank. The only one that's kind of vulnerable is Doppelganger, since he's starting to reach that point where he falls behind everyone's level, and while he reflects Alex's physical attacks, he is still very susceptible to her magic attacks and goes down in just 1 or 2 hits from most of them. So when he's not healing, I just guard with him. This is just a very long and tedious fight, but thankfully I don't have to get her HP down to 0. Once her HP gets down to about a third, she'll back away. And I still gain experience, so I ain't complaining, though unfortunately because we didn't actually beat the boss or Alex, we don't get the fruit. And there's nothing else to do here, so we head on over to Sector Eridanus. One of the most infamous and sadistic dungeons in all of gaming, although this first part actually isn't too bad. Just navigate some maze-like corridors, some teleporters, some dark areas, you know, nothing we haven't seen before. Eventually, we run into Zelenin, who finds a device that she thinks is a teleporter, but can't activate it. So we find a Forma that gets it working, and on the other side there's another already active teleporter with a ghoul blocking the way, that we can't get past no matter what. So we just keep exploring. The demons here aren't really all that good, in fact a lot of them actually kinda suck, but while here I do reach level 40 where I confuse King Frost. King Frost is an amazing demon in this game because he learns the skill Meteoran. You know, that skill that fully heals your entire party. King Frost gets it at level 40. Doppelganger, you have served me well, but I have found a new healer. You may no longer be used, but you will not be forgotten. Anyway, before too long, you'll get to this higher up section of the area that looks very different from the rest of the sector, but strangely familiar. You might notice these 2 gates that have angels and demons on opposite sides. These demons will have you participate in optional battles with special rules, and I highly recommend you do them because they come with some pretty sweet rewards. Right now I can only do the first 2, but as you get further into the game and as your gate opening app upgrades, you'll be able to do more of them. The first one is against a Casfiel, and for this fight, your party's total combined magic stat can't exceed 60. So what I do is I just bench King Frost and only use Gukumatsu and Zuchotin. And it's still pretty easy. Casfiel spends most of the fight going for Garudine, which does quite a bit of damage to Doomguy and Zuchotin, but not enough to kill in one hit. Gukumatsu, on the other hand, is just eating all of his attacks up. He also knows Rakukajo, which is kinda bad. Zuchotin does know Silent Prayer, so I have a counter though. Casfiel is weak against electricity, and both Doomguy and Gukumatsu have electric attacks. And even with only 3 party members, I'm still doing a good amount of damage each turn. Just a little under 400 to be exact. And thankfully, the boss doesn't have a lot of HP. Once he gets low on HP, he'll go for charge, and then immediately follow this up with a Deathbound. This probably won't kill my party since everyone has a physical resistance, but just to be safe on the last turn I use a Zionga Stone since items take priority in this game, and that takes him out. On the other side, we fight against, well, Zuchotin, and the rules here are that you can't use recovery skills. This fight is even easier, probably one of the easiest non-mandatory bosses in the entire game because of how little HP he has. I can't use King Frost, so I just swap him out with Horkos, who is still a decent demon at this point in the game, and have everyone except Gukumatsu attack with their best ice attack, and this fight is over in just 1 turn. Now, both the rewards for these missions combined allow me to purchase the sub-apps that give my demons a chance to gain a bonus to each stat when leveling up. It's not a guarantee like it is in SMT 4, but given how Redux removed the limit on how many apps can be active at once, there's no reason not to use them. However, there is one other app you get with these, and it is without doubt the best one, the Double Down app. This pretty much guarantees that a demon's skill is going to mutate when it levels up. And because in Redux you can see what a skill is going to mutate into before you actually let it happen, this is just perfect. So with those taken care of, it's only a few more steps until we get to the vanishing point, but as soon as we find it, Arthur calls us back to the ship. This is because there are some other humans here in the Schwarzwelt that aren't part of the investigation team, but they have the same kind of ship and use the way cooler black demonicas. They offer to help us if we help them, despite the fact that we're about to blow up the Schwarzwelt while they'll still be in it, but we have to find these 3 unique Forma pieces. This is where things start to get really ridiculous, and why so many people dread playing through this part of the game. I'm going to show you a map. Just look at this map for a second. Just take a minute, pause the video if you have to, just study this map. Oh, and this is only the first level. You still have to navigate through the second level too. It's not fun, and even with a guide and this map to go by, this sector is still one of the most painful dungeons to navigate in the entire franchise. I don't know how I was able to clear this sector by myself without a guide when I was a kid, but somehow I did. Today, though, I wouldn't even dream of attempting this without a guide and an emulator with save states. After spending about 2 weeks teleporting around aimlessly and slaughtering thousands of demons while doing so, I finally find the 3 Forma that Jack wanted, and in return he upgrades our gate opening app. Now, we can enter the vanishing point and fight the boss, but I can also move through the doors in the areas where I did the optional bosses and do the next ones. The next one for the Angels has me fight against Aniel, and this is probably the easiest out of all of them. The caveat here is that I have to beat him in 7 turns. He's weak against wind, and since wind isn't exactly covered well by my current party, I bring out Fuki, who I recruited earlier, and yeah, with 3 of my 4 party members having wind skills, by the end of the first turn he already has just barely over half his health, and by the end of the second turn he's almost dead. He does go for concentrate in a last-ditch attempt to wipe out the party, and just to be safe I set up a bite the bullet, but I don't even need it because he goes for Zeodyne on Gukumats, which doesn't even do enough to kill, and then the rest of the party finishes him off. He then gives me the Plasma Sword, which I can't actually equip because I need to be law aligned, but that's okay because the sword we get from the other side is much better anyways. On the other side, we have to fight Komokuten, and this battle is also incredibly easy. The caveat here is that at the start of the battle, he reduces everyone's MP to 1. This normally would be a huge problem, but he doesn't actually care if you use any MP restoring items. It may be tempting to use a Great Chakra, but seeing as how I only have 1, I instead use a Soma drop on Doomguy. He's also weak to wind, and a single storm shot followed by a co-op attack takes away nearly half of his HP. I just have everyone else use their normal attack, and after another co-op storm shot, the battle is over. My reward from this is the Varja, which I have to be Chaos aligned to use, which, you know, I am. And this sword only has a base power of 3 less than the sword I have equipped, except it can hit up to twice, which is amazing. Now, before moving on to the main boss, there is one more optional boss in this area. In the room with the door to the boss, if you take one of the doors on the left or right sides, it'll take you on this path that leads to the back of the room. And you might notice that this area is already marked on the map. That's because this is the area where you fought Yggdrasil, and now we have to fight him again. This time for real. When you enter the room, you'll see your previous self fall, and now Yggdrasil will have to be fought as a boss. And it's one of the easiest bosses in the game. My party is more than prepared. Because Yggdrasil is a grass type, he is obviously weak to fire type attacks. With a full party of fire attackers of the same alignment, Yggdrasil doesn't stand a chance. After the first turn, he's already at just barely over half of his health. His normal attack does do a number on Ashera, so I heal just to be safe, and then he goes for his normal attack on Doomguy, which does absolutely nothing. And then the next turn, he gets burnt to a crisp. And I'm rewarded with the Nornir ring, a ring that increases all of my stats by 1. Only one thing left to do now, take on the main boss, Ouroboros. This boss is one of the most infamously difficult bosses in this game, and with good reason. When I played this game for the first time as a kid, this was actually what made me realize the importance of buffs and debuffs in SMT. In my desperation, I noticed that my Zakoum had a skill that lowered the enemy's defense, so I used it, and I noticed that it was making a significant difference. So coming back to this game on a higher difficulty with a rule that prevents buffs, I'm expecting this to be ludicrously difficult, to the point where it might be the end of the run. So is it? Nope. This boss is also super easy. In the first turn of the fight, I get her down to 2/3 of her max HP. Now, she does automatically restore some HP at the end of every turn, but this is nothing compared to the amount of damage I'm able to do each turn, which is around 200 to 350 damage for every move. Much like Yggdrasil, she's weak against fire, and you already saw how easy that boss fight was. She only goes for her normal attack, which is actually kinda strong, but nothing to be worried about. In the third turn, I could probably finish her off, but just to be safe, I use Braveheart, and it doesn't even make a difference because I'm still able to finish her off. How was I able to finish off one of the banes of my childhood on impossible difficulty without buffs in just 3 turns? But that's actually not the end. After we beat her, Gore spouts some nonsense at us, and uh-oh, Ouroboros is back. Turns out she's been kept alive by some demons that are supplying her with energy. So now we have to go around the back area and kill them. These battles are also easy to the point where I don't even know why the game is even bothering to make me do this. These battles are actually easier than the random encounters I fought on the way to them. But we take care of them, and now we have to challenge Ouroboros again. Well, that last phase was pretty painfully easy, so will this one pose any challenge? Well, my attacks are doing more damage, and she no longer gains HP at the end of every turn, but she also has more HP, so that about evens out. Although now, she's actually using her attacks. Ouroboros has a pretty solid move pool that can really pose a problem if you're not prepared. She has Mahama, which is pretty annoying, but thankfully my King Frost knows Tetraja, which I make sure to set up on the first turn. And I'm glad I did, because on that very same turn, she goes for Mahama. My party is able to take off about 1/4 of her HP this turn. The next turn, she goes for Wild Lightning, which does a decent amount while I spend another turn attacking, and this gets her down to a little under half. I anticipate another Wild Lightning, so just to be safe, I use Bite the Bullet, but instead of Wild Lightning, she goes for Wave of Death, which is easily her most devastating move. This is a very strong physical move that casts random ailments on the party, and it kills King Frost and Ashera from full HP in just 1 hit. Thankfully, they hold on thanks to my commander skill, but I can't afford to take another hit like that. I immediately heal up with a Bead Chain, set up another Tetraja with King Frost, while having Ashera and Zuchoten keep attacking while she uses Wild Lightning. And now she's at about 1/4 of her HP. I'm not entirely sure if I can finish her off the next turn, it all depends on the turn order, but I decide to take a big risk and use Assailment, while having the rest of my party attack. And thankfully my allies do move before her, and I am able to finish her off. That was kinda close, but we were successfully able to beat both forms of Ouroboros on our first attempts without buffs. So we get the exotic matter, use it to head on out, and yeah, things don't exactly go according to plan. On the way out, our ship gets intercepted, we get a lecture from those 3 weird guys we met at the beginning, and the joint project's plan to blow up the Schwarzwelt doesn't work. So yeah, our plan didn't work, and now we're in a new sector. All we can do is just go back to exploring and find the next piece of exotic matter. And by that, I mean actually do the next sphere of the Womb of Grief first. And this is probably the easiest sphere out of all of them. The only challenge here is that you have to navigate invisible pathways, which is super easy compared to the other puzzles we've had to do so far. About halfway in, we run into Alex watching a movie on her ring projector of Louisa, who is her mother. So, Lucifer took the form of a woman and had a kid. That is a very weird thing to think about. I mean, who's the father? Is it Walter? If it is, good for him. So the boss at the end is Forneus, who fights us purely because he's angry that Alex killed his friend Amon, and he was hoping to fight Alex, but is going to make do with us instead. Now, Forneus fights with a mixture of ice magic and physical attacks, but he also has a handful of buff skills, specifically Charge and Acid Breath. Acid Breath I can easily counter with Zuchoten's Silent Prayer, but there's nothing I can do about his Charge. His weakness is Gun, which is good because everyone except King Frost has a gun attack. Now, for the first couple of turns, things go fine, but after using Charge, he goes for Death Bite, which deals physical damage to random targets. When he uses this, it takes out both King Frost and Long resists physical attacks. Thankfully, King Frost has Endure, but Long doesn't. Instead of resetting, I just use a Balm of Rising and summon him again, and after that, this fight is a breeze. Forneus is weak against gun attacks, which my party has pretty good coverage for, and I'm doing a good amount of damage every turn. Forneus just spends most of the fight going for ice attacks, which my party eats up, and it's only a short amount of time before I finish him off. So he gives us the fruit and unlocks the way ahead. But Alex is back for a rematch now that we're beat up from the previous fight. Except we're not, because everyone leveled up after that fight, and in this game you're healed after you level up. So there's not a lot to say about this fight against Alex that I didn't say before. Statistically, she's completely identical to how she was in the last attempt. Same level, same stats, same move, same everything. The only difference is that now we actually have to bring her HP down to 0, though it does help that we're now higher level and have better stats and moves. Although, I also no longer have Doppelganger, so I can no longer make her attack herself by missing. But other than that, the strategy is still the same. Just attack with electric moves, heal with King Frost, counter her smokescreen with Silent Prayer, and when she uses Evade Magic, which she doesn't actually use that much, just wait. She seems to prefer Evade Physical here for some reason. Once she gets down to about a third of her HP, she'll use A12 Incendiary, which covers the field in fire and deals fire damage to the entire party at the end of every turn. And everyone on my team except Doomguy resists fire, including King Frost since I gave him resist fire when I fused him. And it only takes a couple more turns after she uses this to finish her off. But Alex still runs off with the fruit she got earlier, and Demeter isn't too happy about this, but whatever, we've done all there is to do here. Oh, and from Forneus, we got the Spotted Leather, which allows us to make the Co-op Enhanced C app, which makes it so that critical hits now trigger co-op attacks, which is how it should have been in the first place, but I'll take what I can get. Now, we move out into Sector Fornax, and if Eridanus gave you any trouble, which I'm sure it did, you'll be relieved to know that Sector Fornax is pretty simple in comparison. It makes up for this, however, with its abundance of bosses. Not counting the optional bosses, there is a total of 6 bosses here. All of the previous sector bosses have now been brought back, and they now have new forms. The first of which is actually encountered pretty early on. That boss is Morax, who in this sector is Moloch. And he's incredibly easy. Everyone in my party except Long has an ice attack, and he gets brought down to under half of his health in the first turn. He goes for Miragidine, which does a decent amount to Doomguy, so the next turn I heal with King Frost. Then he goes for Gehenna, which inflicts everyone with fear, but I just heal it off with a Mipatra Stone, and then finish him off. After that, we get to this big wide open room with 3 pathways, each of which leads to a different section of the dungeon. We decide to go left, and here we have to fight Horkos, who is now Orcus, and he's even easier. He has the same weaknesses as Horkos, so everyone on my party has a counter for him. The only move he uses during this fight is taking a bite, which hardly does anything, and he only gets to use it twice because on the third turn I take him out. After that, we're called back to the ship again by Arthur because apparently he's discovered that Captain Jack created a new base somewhere in the Schwarzwelt and might be up to something suspicious. So Jimenez volunteers to stay behind while we continue exploring. Now, in the next section of Fornax, there is a side quest you can do that's given by Alice. You have to chase a hair of Inaba down a few floors, and once you corner it, Alice will try to skin it alive. You can interrupt her, but regardless of whatever you do, you have to fight her as a boss. Now, Alice is the first boss in quite a while that's put up any real challenge. She's one of those bosses that has no weaknesses, and the only one that can do any real damage to her is Doomguy. Everyone else either just has to chip away at her health very slowly, or play what little supportive roles they can. Alice will spend most of the fight going for her normal attack, but occasionally she'll use Lullaby. If she does, it's best you heal it off as soon as possible if you can, because she also knows Eternal Rest, which kills everyone who is asleep when she uses it. Her signature attack, though, is Die For Me, which is an insta-kill dark attack with the highest chance to insta-kill in the entire game. This is pretty much a guaranteed kill on anyone that isn't immune to darkness, so Tetraja is an absolute must here. Thankfully, I set this up in advance. For the first attempt, it's a long and tedious battle, but things mostly go smoothly. That is, until she gets low, then she starts going for Energy Drain, which steals HP and MP from whoever it hits. On impossible difficulty, this would be pretty useless on the party, but on the enemies, it's great for them because not only does it heal them by a pretty significant amount thanks to the boosted damage, but it also leaves the target with much less MP than they had before. At the end of the fight, she goes for this on Doomguy, which gets his HP pretty low, and then, before I could do anything else, she finishes him off with a Dream Needle. I attempt the fight again, and it goes about the same. As in, it goes fine until she gets low and starts going for Energy Drain. And then she finishes off Doomguy again with Dream Needle, which does just barely enough damage to kill him. The third attempt goes the same again, but thankfully she doesn't go for Energy Drain nearly as much. She goes for Lullaby a couple of times, but doesn't follow it up with an Eternal Rest, thank God. And shortly after this, I am able to finish her off with a Frigid Shot. Don't you just love it when the optional bosses are harder than the mandatory ones? Now, because we saved the rabbit, we get a bead chain, but our main reward is the hexagram, which upgrades our Forma Search app. At the bottom of this area, we encounter Mithras, who is now Mitra, and as you'd probably expect, he's really easy. He's still weak against wind, and even though I only have 2 wind attackers, I mean, just look at all that damage I'm doing. I don't even need to think about what my other demons are doing. He just spends the fight going for crappy physical moves like Rampage and Explosive Fist, and I just spam my wind attacks until I finish him off on the 4th turn. After that, we're called back to the ship again because Jimenez has been captured by Jack's squad. We go to the base to rescue him, and here we find out that Jack's squad are running all kinds of messed up experiments on demons. There are also a few mini-bosses against human enemies, but they're hardly worth talking about. I mean, they don't even have any skills. Like, at all. Once we get to the lab, we see that the guy there is trying to fuse Jimenez with Boogaboo. Since we can't shut it off, we instead hook up our comp and use the fusion program to fuse them together. Now, Jimenez is even cooler than he was before, and we can go into their ship, where Jimenez pries the hatch open with his bare hands and starts killing everyone inside. Captain Jack sends some of his demons after him, and then we have to fight Captain Jack as a boss. Now, Captain Jack fights alongside... Make sure you kill these things first. And I'm not saying that for the reasons that you think I am. These things are actually a pretty big problem in this fight because of their skill Bites the Dust, which inflicts the target with the bomb ailment, which causes them to instantly die and deal damage to the rest of the party when they're attacked. The sooner you get rid of these things, the sooner you can start focusing on finishing off Captain Jack. Fortunately, they don't have anywhere near as much HP and can be taken out easily in just a couple of full party co-op attacks. Now, I went into this boss expecting an easy fight, but Jack really proved me wrong. His attacks are ridiculously powerful compared to the other bosses we faced recently. He mostly uses a variety of gun attacks, and they deal a metric ton of damage. His single shot does enough to kill Doomguy in just one hit. In fact, most of his attacks do. This is not going to work. It's another case where I'm going to need something to resist his gun attacks, and my only option is the armor vest, which resists both fizz and gun while being weak against electricity. So I equip this and attempt the fight again. I also equip the strike rifle so that Doomguy has something he can hit the enemies with, and this turns out to be exactly what I needed. The first thing I do is set up Braveheart so that I can't be inflicted with the bomb ailment. I then take out the first Picasa on the same turn, and after that I immediately take out the next one and heal off the damage done by Captain Jack. After that, it's really easy. Jack only uses gun attacks, which, Doomguy and Long both resist. While King Frost and Zuchoten don't resist it, they're bulky enough that they don't die in one hit to these attacks, and King Frost can easily heal everyone back up. Jack has no weaknesses, so besides having Doomguy do most of the damage, all I can do is hit him with whatever attacks I have and hope for a critical hit, which actually does happen a couple times. And that's the best way I can describe my strategy for this fight. Just heal, attack, 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 and hope for a critical hit while tanking Jack's attacks. And it doesn't take me very long to finish him off. You can probably guess what happens next. Just before Jimenez kills Ryan, Zelenin steps in, and then the team takes occupation of Jack's squad. Now, it's back to Sector Fornax, and with the Forma we got, we upgrade our enemy search app so that we can now detect and fight the strange demon that's blocking the middle path. And this thing is pretty easy. It hardly has any HP compared to the other bosses, though I'd argue it's actually harder than them, because it also doesn't have any weaknesses. It's just a slightly improved Delphinus parasite. It does have some elemental attacks. It has Miragion, it also has Ashera, which thankfully only hits King Frost when he goes for it, and after that I just finish him off. Okay, so by process of elimination, you've probably figured out that the next and last reincarnated boss of this dungeon we have to face is Ashera, who is now Ashera. And yes, she also knows Ashera. Thankfully, I'm ready this time. I immediately use Braveheart on the first turn, and that blocks her Ashera, and it makes this fight go from potentially really difficult to ridiculously easy. Probably easier than the original Ashera. After that, I just blast ice at her and beat her to death with co-op attacks while she tries attacking in vain with what little she has. And we finish her off on the fourth turn. From here, there's just a little bit of dungeon left, and at the end, we come face to face with Tiamat, who is the main boss of this sector. The exact same thing that happened in the fight against Jack happens here. I go in expecting an easy boss, she goes for her best move, and I die in one hit. It does exactly enough damage to kill me. Well, I wasn't at full HP when that happened, so I'll just have to make sure to be extra careful with healing. Now, Tiamat is weak against electricity, which only 2 of my party members are able to cover, but she also has a pretty strong move pool. That skill that she killed me with in the first attempt, Mother Earth, not only deals strong ice damage, but it also heals her. In addition to strong attacks, Tiamat also has a variety of buff and debuff skills that she likes to use, including Luster Candy, which increases all of her stats, and her skill Sunset Melody deals almighty damage and lowers the party's attack. Not to mention, her normal attack hits everybody. I have to make absolutely sure that Doomguy has full HP at the end of every turn, because even a small loss of HP will bring him down to enough HP for Mother Earth to kill him in one hit. Tiamat is also a pretty tanky boss. My party is able to do around 500 to 600 damage to her every turn, which is good, but her health bar doesn't go down nearly as fast as any of the other bosses fought here. Plus, you know, like I said, Mother Earth hits all party members and heals her, and each time she uses this, it sets us back by quite a bit, because not only do I have to spend turns recovering from the damage dealt, but I also have to spend more turns dealing the damage back to her. Fortunately, she doesn't go for these moves very often. She mostly uses her normal attack. I just spend most of the battle attacking and healing while using Silent Prayer to neutralize her buffs and debuffs. It is kind of a long fight, and it does take a good amount of effort and a good amount of turns. But on my second attempt, I am able to beat Tiamat. We see Commander Gore again, and we get the exotic matter, and then head to the next sector, Sector Grus. We enter the building, where we once again see Mastema, who Zelenin asks for help. Good timing too, because right after this we get a signal from the Lightning that Ryan and the rest of Jack's squad have taken back control of their ship and killed all of our guys. We follow Mastema to the Angel's domain, and he suggests that we pacify them with the Song of an Angel. He can't do it, but he is able to turn humans into angels, so that's exactly what he does to Zelenin. He turns her into Lady Gaga, and she goes in front of the Lightning to put on a concert, and her singing is so mesmerizing that it causes all of the members of the squad to surrender. The demons that they captured head out, and Jimenez decides to go with them, but before he does, he gives us the forma that we need to upgrade our phase shifting app so that we can enter Type B domains. By using this on the Sanctum thing, we can enter the demon's domain, where I can talk to the demon who's blocking the only way forward. They offer to open the path if we get revenge on Jack's squad for them, but this isn't your only option. You can also either have Zelenin sing to kill all the demons, or you could just kill the demon and move on through yourself. I opt to just break through because I'm too lazy to backtrack all the way to Jack Squad HQ, and having Zelenin sing would give me points toward Law, which I don't want. So I just kill the Grendel in an extremely easy boss battle and then head on through the door. I then get a hallucination of Gore ordering all the crew members to kill each other, but we're able to snap out of it and cause Gore to return to his former self, although he still has all the powers that the demons gave him, and he's also alive, which is pretty nice. But now we have to get through the main section of the dungeon. Grus is basically a combination of all the dungeons we've been through up until this point, and it contains elements from all of them. Like you have the teleporters from Eridanus, the conveyor belts from Delphinus, the damaging floors and one-sided puzzles from Boots. You get the idea. The demons here are also pretty high level, and some of them are proving to be quite problematic, though I am able to complete the last of Anthony's quests because in the areas resembling Sector Carina we can encounter Gremory. Also in this sector we find the Cornucopia Forma, which upgrades our gate unlock, and after that it doesn't take too long for us to make it to the sector boss, Maya. Maya is commonly considered one of the hardest bosses in the game, but personally I've never had much of a problem with her, but we'll see how this goes. Well, the first attempt I get vaporized in one shot by a Bufudine, so not a good first attempt. She has the one target heavy attacks for every element, and since I can't buff my defenses, it would probably do me some good to gain some more levels, which I actually can do by heading back to Sector Eridanus and doing the next rounds of optional boss battles. On the Chaos side, we have a fight against Jikokuten, and the caveat here is that none of my demons can have more than 300 HP. I seriously doubt anyone is going to be using any demons with less HP than that by this point in the game, but thankfully this doesn't apply to the protagonist. So I just try soloing the battle, but that doesn't go well, so I buy some low-level demons from the compendium and attempt the battle again. And this time it goes much better. Because of how low-level these demons are, their co-op attacks don't do a lot, but when they trigger it, it does do a good amount because of the protagonist. His weakness is electricity, and thankfully he doesn't have a lot of health. He mostly just goes for his normal attacks, so while he could easily one-shot pretty much all my party members, he actually mostly goes for Doomguy. He doesn't even take out any of the party members until the very end, and I just zap him as much as I can until his health bar reaches 0. My reward is the Monarch Vest, which is a chaos-only armor piece which, in terms of elemental resistances, isn't the best, but in terms of sheer defensive power, it is one of the best in the game. Definitely the best at this point. Now, in order to enter the 4th and final segment, I need to be Chaos Aligned, which I am, so I just head on through and meet Bishamonten. And his caveat is that my party's total level has to be below 150. I don't really want to go through the effort of building a party just for him, so I just bring along King Frost because he's still currently my best healer. And also Arachne because death fodder. Fortunately, Bishamonten is pretty easy. Not a lot of health, glaring weakness to fire, only goes for his normal attack. You know, just burn him with some fire attacks, and in a few turns, bada bing, bada boom, he goes down. Now that's it for the Chaos Trials, and my reward this time is the Kurikara Blade. A decent sword for the late game, but it's not actually the one I want. That one I have to get from the other side, but before I can do that, I have to do the second to last trial. The fight against Aniel and Casfiel together. And here, my party's total level average has to be below 45. You're probably expecting me to make some comment about how this fight is painfully easy and the rule set is stupid or something, but I won't because this battle is actually kind of hard. This is the only one of these trials where there are 2 enemies at once, and they both have skill sets that complement each other. Casfiel is weak against electricity and nulls wind, while Aniel is weak against wind and nulls electricity, and they're both actually pretty powerful. Aniel especially, I mean his Zeodyne is strong enough to take out most of my party members in one hit, and their combined efforts can kill Doomguy in a single turn. Did I mention that Casfiel also has Rakukaja and likes to use this a lot too? It's really just a test of luck. You just have to keep attacking and hoping that they don't gang up on the protagonist. For my first couple of failed attempts, I bring along Long and Loki, with Lilin to bring the level average down. But in my successful attempt, I swap out Long with King Frost so I have a healer. I focus on taking out Casfiel as soon as possible, because the sooner he goes down, the sooner I no longer have to worry about the Rakukajas. Then I focus on Aniel. He takes a little longer to take down because he has a little more HP, and toward the end of the fight, he goes for Judgment Light, which is this game's light counterpart to die for me. But thankfully, I anticipated this and set up a Tetraja at the start of the match. And the next turn, he gets finished off. The reward for this quest is the Cleric Robes, which is not very good, but I can't use them anyway. And I can't do the next quest here because I need to be law aligned. Which I am not, but don't worry, we'll be coming back. As for right now, I think it's a good time to attempt Maya again. Now, despite how poorly my first attempt went, Maya's power isn't actually the reason she's so infamous. The reason she's so infamous is because of her skill Illusory Ritual, which doubles her agility for 3 turns. So it's kind of like Alex, only this move covers all attacks, not just one type. Although, I actually have to wonder how much agility there is to double because even when this is active, my attacks don't seem to have much of a problem hitting. Like, I'd say they land maybe 4 out of 5 times when this is active. Now, another one of Maya's moves is Evil Vortex, which is an almighty attack that casts random ailments on the party. This itself isn't much of a problem, except for the small chance of it casting stone on the protagonist, leading to a game over, which it does. This is just another luck battle, or one where I just have to keep going all out with my attacks and hoping that I'm able to kill her before she kills me. I do equip the Buffalo Gun, which isn't better than the Frost Cannon in terms of skills, but it does deal more damage with its normal shot attack. It's perfect for this fight with Maya being weak against gun, and overall, my party has pretty good gun coverage. With this, I'm able to do well over 1,000 damage to her each turn when all of my attacks successfully land. All I can do is just keep shooting at her while healing and hoping that she doesn't go for an attack that can take out Doomguy and lead to a game over. Also, I'm not sure if Silent Prayer actually works on her Illusory Ritual. I mean, I probably could have found out by pressing X, but whatever. Either way, just play this fight like you would a first-person shooter. Shoot, 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 and shoot some more while healing every turn. I just keep doing this until I am lucky enough to survive, and after a few attempts, I am able to beat Maya.
die.
We get back to the ship, and as soon as we do, Arthur gets hijacked. The three wise men start talking about how they want a world of order under God. Lucy here then shows up and said that a world of chaos ruled by the strong would be way cooler, and then Zelenin and Jimenez show up and some of the crew members join them. If it wasn't obvious, the alignment lock is coming up very soon, so there are a few things I want to get out of the way before that happens. First of all, I want to do the only trial in Sector E that I haven't done yet. Now, remember what I said a moment ago about being unable to do the Angel's Last Trial? Yeah, that's about to change. See, in the back area of Sector Antlia, there is this high pixie that wants to build a fairy kingdom. This is the same pixie that gave you the pixie knife at the beginning of the game. She'll give you a series of quests where you have to bring her demons of the fairy race to add to her kingdom. I've been doing these off camera, but after you do the one where you bring her a goblin, this goblin will be digging a hole in the middle of this area. When you talk to him, sometimes you'll get the option to either help him or watch, and when he finds something, you can either congratulate him or make him give it to you. Helping him gives you points toward law, while making him give you what he found brings you toward chaos. It's not a lot of points, but you can do this as many times as you want, so you can basically use this to change your alignment at any point in the game before the alignment lock. So I help the goblin dig until all my past transgressions against the angels have been forgiven, and then I go back to them and they let me start the next quest. Oh, by the way, I still have the Monarch Vest equipped. For these alignment exclusive equipment pieces, you need to be of the correct alignment to equip them, but once you actually have them equipped, the game no longer cares, and it's the reason I'm taking the time to do this quest. Anyway, they open up the door to the next area, and in here is Mother Harlot, the last and strongest of the fiends in this game. But we're not going to challenge her right away, because this boss is going to be very hard, and I want a full party of the same alignment. So I go back to Antlia, change my alignment back to Chaos, and come back, and the angels don't seem to have a problem with this. The door is still open, and yeah, I go in and start the quest. Now, Mother Harlot is not going to be an easy boss. In fact, it might be the hardest non-mandatory boss in the entire game. This thing is level 92. That is one of the highest leveled enemies in the game, even higher than Shekinah. Now, thankfully, she's also a case of classic dumb SMT AI, where she just won't go for her best attacks very often. She spends 90% of her turns going for her normal attack. Granted, this is a very strong normal attack and can easily take out anyone who doesn't resist physical attacks in one hit, but her other attacks, specifically her exclusive skill Babylon Goblet, absolutely obliterates my party. After a few attempts, I conclude that I should probably save this fight for later. So I go to the next sphere of the Womb of Grief and get that out of the way. This is probably the most annoying out of all the spheres because, in addition to it being riddled with teleporters, these ones have conditions. You have to go through a series of teleporters, but you have to make sure that you go through the one with the correct number of flowers on the wall behind it. You start with the one that has none, then 1, then 2, then 3, and you just keep adding them until you get to 6. Although it's actually not as bad as it sounds, and before too long you will make it to the boss. Here, we see Alex once again trying to take on a demon all by herself, but this time it isn't going so well, so we step in and help. This next fight is against Zeus, and this fight has a very special gimmick that makes him one of the hardest to most players, but thankfully it's a gimmick that I am more than prepared for. Although in the first attempt he goes for Madness Nails and kills Loki in one shot, which kinda makes me realize that Loki should probably have some kind of physical resistance, so I use a Mitama to pass Resist Fizz onto him. Alright, let's try this again. Zeus is weak against wind, which every single member of my party has an attack for, and the combined efforts of my party are doing about 400 damage to him with every hit. That is insane, but, you know, I can't actually hit him with 4 co-op attacks in one turn because, well, for one thing, his attacks are very strong and I'm going to need to heal, but also a lot of them have debuffing and buffing effects. His Carino skill is very strong, and while on its own it can't kill anyone in one hit, it does have an effect that brings the target's defense down to -4. That's the minimum, a stat in which they'll probably die in one hit to anything else. So yeah, Silent Prayer is going to be a really important skill here. But Keranos isn't his only skill like this. His other skill, Adamant Sickle, is a physical skill that increases his attack by 2 levels. So while not as bad, it's still pretty bad, and makes Silent Prayer necessary. His worst skill, though, is Divine Lightning. This is a very strong Almighty attack, and he goes for this once he's below half health. It doesn't kill Doomguy or Ashera, but it does take out Long and Loki, and it also casts Mute on the protagonist. I spend the next couple of turns trying to get back on my feet, and during this time, he goes for his move Soul Canis. This is the gimmicky move that I was talking about earlier. What it does is it nullifies all status changes and prevents them for 3 turns. This doesn't actually affect me because I'm not using buffs anyway, but after this he goes for another Divine Lightning and kills me. Next attempt on the second turn, he kills me again with an Adamant Sickle. If his attack is positive and or my defense is negative, that puts me in range for him to kill me in 1 hit, so I have to make sure to play as carefully as I can, and use Silent Prayer every turn. He goes for Soul Canis pretty early on this time, and this is when I realize that even though his stat changes get reset, mine don't if they're negative, but they're still locked in place. So now Ashera is stuck at -4 defense. But yeah, there's nothing I can do, so I just go back to attacking. He starts spamming Divine Lightning, which, not to my surprise, takes out Ashera. So I stall by healing with Bead Chains, and once it wears off, I revive Ashera and bring her back out. I do take a pretty big risk by doing this because Doomguy isn't at full HP and very susceptible to Divine Lightning, but he doesn't actually go for that this turn. But in the next turn, he does kill Ashera again in 1 hit with an Adamant Sickle. Although, by this point, he's pretty low, and even without her, after 3 more wind attacks, I am able to finish off Zeus and end the battle. We get his fruit piece, his Forma that lets us develop co-op enhance R, and Alex drops her ring, and that is the end of the 5th sphere of the Womb of Grief. There is nothing else to do except continue on with the main quest to the alignment lock, but I don't want to give up on Mother Harlot just yet, so I'm going to go back and attempt her some more. I make some small adjustments to my party. I give Ashera Resist Fizz through Mitama Fusion, and I bring along a Mushusu that I fuse specifically for the purpose of aiding me in this fight. He resists Fizz and repels electricity, which will reflect Mother Harlot's Mezeodyne back at her, and hopefully deter her from using it. He also has Magarula, which Mother Harlot is weak against, though I'm still facing many of the same problems I was before, though the main thing that makes Mother Harlot difficult is just how high her base evasion rate is. My attacks miss a lot. I suppose this is due to her high level, but it's just frustrating when my attacks connect only about 50% of the time. When my attacks do hit, which, like I said, isn't super often, they don't do a lot of damage either. About 200 damage after a full party co-op attack, which is much less than I've been doing to any of the recent bosses. But again, this is probably due to her high level. The thing about this fight is, most of these shortcomings are supposed to be countered by using buffs and debuffs. Unlike most bosses in this game, Mother Harlot has no way to counter either of these, so under normal circumstances, this fight would be a complete joke. It's a perfect example of how crucial buffs are to the core gameplay of SMT, and without them, there's just no strategy. Just blow wind at her and heal every turn, and hope she doesn't go for Babylon Goblet, because that's a game over. Her other attacks, Mezeodyne, doesn't do enough damage to kill the protagonist, and Mamudoom can easily be blocked by Tetraja, but Babylon Goblet is just insta-death at this level, and because it's almighty, there's nothing you can do to block it. Although, somehow, I'm able to get her really low on HP, and here, I'm expecting her to go for Babylon Goblet any second. I go for Bite the Bullet in hopes that I can use that to survive, but when I do, she just goes for Mamudoom. The next turn, she goes for her normal attack, and then I finish her off. I don't know how I did that, but I can confirm that with an incredible amount of luck, it is possible to meet Mother Harlot on impossible difficulty at low level without using buffs. Now, we have a choice of what we can do here. We can let her go and get points toward Chaos, which is kinda what I want to do, but after all those attempts, I don't want to let her escape, so I just stand there, and when you do that, her beast will eat her. And once we get out, our reward for a job well done is the Amanomi Sword. This is the reason I wanted to do this quest before the alignment lock. The Aminomi sword is arguably the best sword in the base game, with a base power of 130. However, I have to be law aligned to use it. So you know what that means. Go back to Antlia, get my alignment up to law, equip the sword, and then immediately go back to chaos. And now, with me currently having the best sword equipped, while also being chaos aligned and having the best vest equipped, it is time to proceed with the alignment lock. So we head on out into the new sector, take the elevator to the bottom level, and there we meet Gore. We go inside to where Mimolef is laying around, but we can't see her fully yet. We head back to the ship, Gore turns Arthur back on, and apparently, Gore has seen the future. The future that he sees is only going to happen, though, if humanity succeeds in overcoming this conflict alone. Now, if your alignment doesn't lean too far toward one side, it is still possible to get the neutral ending if your current alignment is law or chaos. Gore asks if I would host a demon in myself, and yeah, I totally would. So that means we're the biggest threat to humanity's future, and now we have to fight Gore as a boss. Now, as much as I would love to test my new weapon on Commander Gore, I can't do that because Gore reflects both physical and gun attacks, though he does have a weakness to wind, which I'm noticing is a pretty common weakness with bosses around this point in the game. Now, Gore is an absolute monster in terms of physical prowess. His normal attack can hit up to 5 times. If all 5 of them land on the protagonist, that's a one-hit kill from full HP, which is exactly what happens in the first attempt. This is a pretty rare occurrence though, so I'm not going to resort to equipping physically resistant armor just yet. In fact, doing that would require me to use a much weaker piece of armor, so I don't even know if that would actually help. But anyway, aside from his normal attack, Gore has some pretty devastating physical and gun attacks. His skill Rain Strike deals severe gun damage to random targets. On my second attempt, he goes for this on the first turn, and it kills Ashera in 1 hit from full HP. While I'm trying to revive her, he then goes for Rain Strike, which is a physical attack that hits random targets, and it can hit a pretty good number of times. So much so that it takes out Loki, despite him resisting physical. I then spend the next few turns reviving and summoning my dead allies, so that I can get my party back on its feet. And after this, well, I probably just got unlucky for those first few turns because after this, it isn't really all that hard. His attacks do hit, and they do deal a good amount of damage, but they don't deal enough to take anyone out. With a full party of cooperating wind users, I'm able to do around 400 to 500 damage to him with each attack. So when all my allies are able to attack, that's a maximum of 2,000 damage per turn. Though I can't usually do this because I need to use Ashera to heal. Gore also has a couple of buff skills, Charge, which I don't think needs any explanation, and then there's Self-Denial, which is a move that increases his attack and heals him, but not by much. It only heals him by about 300, which, compared to how much damage I'm able to do each turn, is nothing. I can just use Silent Prayer to remove the buff too. Once he gets low on HP, he goes for Charge, and here I'm expecting him to follow it up with a Rain Strike or something, so I use an Attack Mirror, but he instead follows it up with a Self-Denial. So now I'm still vulnerable to a boosted physical attack with no more attack mirrors left. But by this point, he's almost clean out of HP, and after using a Garula Stone, my party takes him out. Except they don't, because Gore, you actually have to beat him twice. Once he runs out of HP, his skill Undefeated will activate, which fully revives him. Gore is really determined not to let the demons or angels win, and you have to admire his dedication. Fortunately, him being revived doesn't actually change anything about this fight, other than having to defeat him a second time. I continue to blast him away with all my party's wind attacks, while healing and surviving his barrage of physical and gun attacks. And after being revived, it only takes a few more turns to bring him down. Gore, you did good, and I respect your efforts, but I'm sorry, this is the future we're going with. We see that the control room is now a complete wreck, and after detecting a fatal error in his personality matrix, Arthur shuts off.
全クルーへ Goodbye.
Then Jimenez comes back, breaks the door open, and infects everyone with something that turns them all into Persona 4 shadows, including me. So we go to visit Memelef again, and she tells us that we need to collect 4 cosmic eggs. This requires us to backtrack to the first 4 sectors of the game. The first one is in Antlia, and this one's already been secured by the demons, so we don't need to fight anyone here. The next one, which is in Boots, has been secured by the angels, so yeah, that means we do need to fight some people. If this were the neutral path, we'd be fighting Zelenin here, but because this is Chaos, we instead fight 3 Yatagarasus, and they are hopelessly easy. Carina, yeah, this one's already been secured by the demons. And in Delphinus, we have to fight a Cherub, and he is also hopelessly easy, not even lasting a full turn. Now that that's done, there is one thing we have left to do if we want to get the new Chaos ending for Redux. We have to complete the Womb of Grief, and thankfully, there's only 1 sphere left. This one really isn't hard compared to the last one. There are some invisible pathways you have to navigate, which you need a special app to do, which you find here, so it requires you to leave and come back, which is annoying, and also, the game isn't actually all that clear about where you need to go, because there's this elevator in the back that leads to the Ingress, and here, you fight a series of super short bosses that will either be incredibly easy, or incredibly hard depending on how lucky you get. I say this because, while they barely have any HP, they also all have Overdrain, which deals a lot of almighty damage and drains both your HP and MP. And while it probably won't kill you, it's gonna set you back due to the amount of damage that it heals them with. The first fight is against, a certain Egyptian goddess, and she goes down in just 1 turn. The next one is against Volvo, not the Cars, who goes down in 5 turns because I only have 2 allies that can strike her weakness, and she takes out one of them on the 2nd turn. The third one is against Cybele, who goes down in 2 turns, but not before taking out Loki. The fourth one is against Anat, who goes down in just 1 turn after everyone in my party blows wind at her. The 5th and final one is against Kali, who takes more than 1 attempt, because not only does she take out Loki, but one of my attacks misses, and she goes for Overdrain twice, which renders me incapable of damaging the amount that she can recover through this move, because I'm out of MP. Despite having 2 of those same things happen on the 2nd attempt, I'm somehow able to beat her because she only uses Overdrain once. But like I said, this isn't actually where I'm supposed to go. All there is behind these bosses is a pillar that you can talk to do an optional boss rush if you're doing New Game Plus, which I won't be doing. So I go back to the 6th sphere to where I'm supposed to go, and here I have to fight the last boss of the Womb of Grief, Maria. Maria may look threatening on paper, I mean if you look at her move pool, but she's really nothing to be worried about. She spends most of the battle going for Hama-On, which is easily blockable by Quetzalcoatl's Tetraja, which I go for pretty much every turn. She even has a move that makes one target weak to light no matter what, but it doesn't counter Tetraja, so as long as you have a Tetraja user, this fight is a complete joke, and her spamming light skills completely eliminates the need to heal. She's weak against ice, and while I only have 2 ice attackers on my team, they're both able to do a total of about 600 damage with each of their co-opt attacks. This whole battle is just a repeating cycle of me setting up Tetraja and her using insta-kill light moves in vain. And with my party hardly taking a scratch, I am easily able to take out Maria on the 1st attempt. So we get the last fruit, and Maria's Halo, which gives me the app that adds an extra skill to demon sources. Demeter tells us that our soil has become tainted and she can't let us keep the fruits, but I say screw that and keep them, and then she just leaves without putting up a fight. Well, that was kind of anticlimactic, but now that we're done with the Womb of Grief, let's get back to the Schwarzwelt. And before going to see Memelef, there is one more thing I want to do. By going to the Demon's Domain at Sector Grus, the spot where I fought Grendel, you can hear a voice from none other than Mara. If you go to where you fought Maya, Mara will give you the quest Mara's Desire, where in Sector Horologium, you'll need to prevent some kind of ritual that the angels are doing. And if you do, you'll get the best gun in the base game. But for now, it's time to head back to the sector and give Memolef the Cosmic Eggs. We get to the elevator, and yeah, the angels kind of beat us there and destroyed it. And here we have an easy mini-boss fight against Israfel. This boss is nothing to write home about, but this is a good opportunity to show you all the power of my new weapon. I mean, just look at that. That's my normal attack. That is pretty insane damage for a normal attack. So now that the shortcut is blocked, we have to go the long way, and there is a pretty large amount of dungeon ahead of us. It's not hard though, just a little bit more of what we've seen before, though the design of this dungeon is really cool. At the halfway point, the environment changes from this burning wasteland to this dark, cloudy thunderstorm. And right after we get to this section, we have to fight Mastema, a boss that I completely forgot about. So Mastema is now far bigger and angrier. He doesn't have a lot in the way of attacks though. His only elemental attack is Untainted Wind, which is strong, but not strong enough to one-shot me. His other damaging attacks, Melphase is just a heavy almighty attack, which also can't one-shot. He also has Judgment, which I'm pretty sure is identical to Judgment Light, and is easily blockable by Tetraja. And then Great Lament, which I'm not actually sure what it does because it doesn't ever hit, but I'd prefer not to find out, so I make sure to set up Braveheart whenever I can. Like I said, Mastema may not be much of an offensive threat, but man can this guy take a beating. He has 8,500 HP, which is more than any other boss I've fought so far. I've reached a point in the game where my party is less focused on dealing damage and hitting the enemy's weaknesses, and is instead more focused on just surviving, and you'll see why soon enough. But a team like that isn't going to help me much against Mastema. I've already replaced most of my damaging skills with passive ones like Endure and Life Surge, because I need my demons to be able to take hits. Now, Mastema is weak against fire, and with the strike rifle equipped, Doomguy and Volvo are my only users of fire magic attacks, and they're not even doing that much, only about 400 with each hit, which isn't horrible, but not great either. And that's when these attacks hit. For some reason, Doomguy keeps randomly missing, which I don't get because Volvo isn't having this problem, but yeah, this is just another one of those really long and tedious fights. I just have to keep chipping away at his health while tanking his attacks and healing up. There are a couple of times where he's able to poke through my defenses and take out Ongyoki with Judgment because he's weak against light. By the end of the fight, Volvo even runs out of MP, but that doesn't stop me from finishing him off with one of Doomguy's attacks. And that is the last we'll be seeing of Mastema. Now, for the next few floors, there isn't a whole lot worth talking about. But on the 6th basement level, I see this is where the angels are performing their ritual thing. So I attempt the fight, and it goes great until he goes for Big Bang and wipes me out. This is another fight like the one against Mother Harlot, where I just need to be lucky enough to go through the entire fight without him using his best move. But unlike that fight, there is something I can do to alleviate this. In the 7th basement level with the Sanctum, inside it you can encounter Fafnir. Now, Fafnir isn't really a great demon in this game, but if you accepted Tanaka's quest from Dent on the ship, he'll give you a piece of himself, and the part of him that you take will give you one of 3 possible items. I chose the Circuit, which gives me the Dragon Ring, which contains Endure, a great skill to have on the protagonist. With this equipped, I go to the ritual site and challenge Seraph again, and it pretty much goes the same way. Seraph is weak against ice, so 2 of my party members are able to strike his weakness. Aside from the almighty attack Big Bang, Seraph can't really do much. In fact, he doesn't really do much. For some reason, despite his summonable form being able to hit all enemies once with his normal attack, in his boss form he can only hit 1 target at a time. And this is what he spends most of the battle doing. He does go for Debilitate about midway in, which I just silent prayer away, and once he gets low, I'm expecting him to go for Big Bang any second. But that doesn't happen, so I didn't even need the Dragon Ring for this fight. Good to know. But anyway, once Seraph is defeated, Mara not only gives us the Peacemaker, the best gun in the base game that gives us ice and almighty moves, but also joins our party. Like, I don't mean she becomes fusible, she actually just joins. So right now, I'm at level 73 with a level 88 demon in my party, and a really good one too. but I'm still not going to be using her because while her stats are impressive, her move pool is total garbage. And I can't fuse her with Mitamas because I need to be at her level or higher to do that. So she's just going to be sitting in the back of my party until I get to that level, if I even do get to that level before the end of the game. There is one other thing I want to do down here, that is gather some materials to create the Thimble Vest. For this, I need 2 Judgment Scales, which I got from some White Riders that I encountered earlier on complete accident, but I also need 2 Kishin Hammers, which I get from Thor's. This vest makes me immune to both ice and wind, but it also increases my max HP by 100, which is going to be very helpful. It's only a little further before I get to Memelef's chamber, where Jimenez is waiting, but so is Alex. Because we finished the Womb of Grief, based on our answer to what Alex is about to ask, we can get either the new or old Chaos ending. Alex explains that she's from the future that we created, and in this future, the human race dies because Alex is the strongest, and she had to kill everyone she met to survive, and she's the last human. Then she brings up Boogaboo. According to Jimenez's rule that the weak should die, Jimenez broke his own rule by saving Boogaboo, who was a pretty weak demon. She actually brings up a good point, and if you agree with Alex here, you'll start the new Chaos ending, where, rather than a world ruled by the strong, you and Jimenez team up to create a world where humans and demons work together to thrive. Alex disappears, meaning that we were able to save the future, and then we try to sell our idea to Memelef, but she's not a big fan of this idea. And yeah, we now have to fight her. Now, in the original game, the Chaos path is significantly easier than the Law or Neutral ones because you don't fight Memelef. But in the new Chaos ending from Redux, we still have to fight her. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do this ending, because I get access to the best demons in the game and some of the best equipment, while also having to fight the hardest boss and getting the full challenge of Strange Journey. Now, if the footage you just saw didn't make it obvious, Memelef is one of the hardest bosses in the entire franchise. Probably the hardest in terms of non-optional bosses. She has 2 forms, a crap ton of HP, and access to the strongest attacks of every element in the game. You should never expect to beat Memelef on your first attempt, or any of your first 5 attempts. The first few attempts should be you going in, finding out what shortcomings you need to cover, and then getting ready for your first real attempt. I get obliterated in my first few attempts. I'm going to need to be higher level with demons that are resistant to all elements. No exceptions. Quetzalcoatl is already good, but Volvo is just a sitting duck, so I grind up to level 78 and fuse Huang Lan. He resists everything in the game, has no weakness, and his normal attack can hit up to 3 times. There is one other preparation I need to make. I grind for the materials I need to make the God Ring. This is an accessory that increases all my stats by 10. While this does mean I'm sacrificing my ability to endure death once, I'm hoping that with the added protection from this, I'll just be able to prevent my death and won't need endure. So with all this in hand, I attempt Memelef again, and it goes much better. Much better. Better as in, I actually stand a chance, and I'm not just getting vaporized on the first or second turn. It does still take a few attempts before I start making any real progress, though. But on the 3rd attempt after coming back with my new party, things start to go really well. As I said, Memelef has the strongest magic for every element in the game, and they hit all targets. If any member of your team besides the protagonist has a single element that they don't at least resist, they are vulnerable and are probably going to die. Maybe not on the 1st or 2nd turn, but it will happen at some point. That goes double for any demon that has any weakness showing. You can forget about using any demon with an elemental weakness, and if you don't, well, you're not going to be using them for very long. In addition to her elemental magic, she also has the only insta-kill attacks that have a 100% chance to hit, so you either need a full team that is immune to both darkness and light, or a dedicated Tetraja user. I mean, I think that's pretty much necessary for this game anyway, but if you somehow made it this far without one, that's going to end here. This isn't even the worst of it. If having some of the strongest moves in the game wasn't bad enough, some sadist at Atlas thought she should also have Ashera Roga, and there's no counter for this besides Braveheart. And Braveheart wasn't even in the original, so it was all luck. And then there's also Great Flood. This is actually one of her weaker attacks, but it's also almighty, meaning there's nothing you can do to prevent it. And it also lowers everyone's agility, so make sure you have a Silent Prayer user handy too. One of her other attacks is Mother's Kiss, which deals physical damage and hits anywhere from 3 to 8 times. This attack is actually favorable in this case because when it hits Quetzalcoatl, it gets reflected back at her, which is pretty good. Now, as far as strategy goes, I mean, there's not really a whole lot to say. That may come as a shock because of how difficult she is, but this boss is really more about preparing than actual strategy. She has no weakness, and is immune to gun attacks, so physical and almighty moves are your best bet here. This also may come as a surprise, but fighting Memelef with no buffs isn't actually a terrible strategy. This is because of her skill Reason Start, which resets all status changes and heals her by a pretty good amount, and she goes for this a lot. Like, if her AI detects a single status change in your favor, she'll use it and heal her. But if nobody's buffing, you don't have to worry about that. With the Peacemaker, I can use Mourn Bullet, which is an almighty attack that hits 2 to 3 times, which is my best attack. But if for some reason I decide that I want to save MP, I can also go for my normal attack every now and then. Quetzalcoatl is my healer and Tetraja user, and I pretty much just have him spam Salvation every turn to heal off any damage that Memelef does. Yoki can't really do much other than just attack and hope for a critical hit since his attacks are pretty weak, and Huanglong spends most of the fight either attacking or using Getsu-A, which, during a full moon, is the strongest physical skill in the game. I could talk about how this battle is insanely difficult and I'm constantly losing party members and struggling to get back on my feet and everything, but really, nothing really interesting happens during this fight. I just keep attacking and healing every turn with the occasional commander skill, Tetraja, or Silent Prayer. But it's mostly just a repeating cycle of taking one of Memelef's attacks, then the party attacks, and Quetzalcoatl heals everyone back up. It takes a good long while, but I am able to finish off Memelef's first form. Now, Memelef's second form is where things start to get interesting. But if you ask me, this form is actually easier than her first form for one reason. She actually has a weakness. Yeah, her affinities in this fight will change every time she goes for her Memelef skill, but she will always start off weak against fire. After she changes, there is a risk you have to take because there is a small chance you might hit one of her elements that she reflects, which probably won't kill you, but just to be safe, I recommend using your demons to check her weakness instead of the protagonist. But when you find it, her weaknesses will stay the same for a good long while, so take advantage of that while you can. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. The only differences are that her stats are slightly higher, and she has a few more moves, but she actually loses the ability to use Ashera Roga, which is good. It means I don't have to be paranoid about setting up Braveheart all the time. Now, this first attempt goes beautifully, until this happens.
It's over. That's the worst final boss fight I've ever done in an RPG. That's not an exaggeration. That is the worst final boss fight I've ever done. And I'm not redoing it, so I don't care about the end of the game. The worst design boss fight I've ever done in a fucking RPG. I'm done. The playthrough is over. I'm not playing this game again. That is it. I'm not wasting any more time. I'm done. That is it. Complete garbage. That is complete hack game design. Fuck that. Fuck that bullshit. I'm glad that they didn't do that. You saw in Persona 4, that shit wasn't in it, right? They said, oh no. No, no, no. Enough of that shit. It's done. It's over. I'm done with this fucking game. Goodbye.
Yep. Memelef has a non-elemental insta-kill attack that cannot be blocked by Tetraja. It's not guaranteed to hit, but in that situation, it hit. And she used it on the one party member whose death means game over. So, all I can do is just start the fight over again. This next attempt goes much worse. In this attempt, she goes for Disaster Cycle, which she didn't use before. This is an almighty attack that deals random ailments to the party. And of course, the first time she gets Charm on my healer, so I use an Anahita Shower, and then she immediately goes for it again, and puts Doomguy to sleep, and then kills everyone with a fire. The one after this goes much better, pretty much the exact same way it did in the attempt before the last one. Once I get to her next phase, well, instead of having Doomguy use items to hit her weaknesses, I just spam Mourn Bullet because this is actually one of the rare cases where my attacks are actually doing more than a full party co-op attack. But as for everyone else, well, I still use them for coverage and initiating co-op attacks. Although Ongyoki does get taken out by a Great Flood pretty early on in the fight, so instead of reviving him, I just bring out Volvo since Mimolef stays weak against fire for a pretty good chunk of the fight. And she actually isn't a sitting duck like she was before. Once Mimolef gets a little below half health, she goes for MA, but she uses it on Huanglong. And thank God it misses, so I just continue pummeling her. After that, she goes for another Great Flood, and this one does take out Volvo, but she gets auto-revived thanks to Endure. And while it doesn't kill him, it does bring Quetzalcoatl down to exactly 1 HP, but I just heal back up. Once she gets low on HP, Mimolef's weakness changes to Ice, and after just a couple more turns and frigid shots to the face, Mimolef is defeated. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It is possible to beat Mimolef on impossible difficulty without buffs. We get the last piece of exotic matter, but then Demeter shows up and uses some kind of special binding power to steal all our fruits. So Lucy shows up again and then tells us that Demeter is in cahoots with the 3 wise men. And with all the fruits, they'll be able to grow more powerful than Mimolef, and we have to head into the Empyrean Ascent to stop her, which is exactly what we do. The Empyrean Ascent is actually pretty short compared to the Womb of Grief. For the first section, you have a few teleporter puzzles where the teleporters have faces, and getting teleported allows you to go through the doors that have one more face than the one that teleported you. It's actually a pretty interesting concept for a teleporter puzzle. I don't know how Atlas did it, but somehow they were able to make teleporter puzzles fun in this game. So we do this for a little bit until we get to the next area. Now, remember what I said about Mimolef not being the final boss of the Chaos Path in Vanilla Strange Journey? Yeah, that's Zelenin, and we still haven't dealt with her yet, and she's still not a big fan of our plan. So, we have one more boss to fight before the final one here, and that's her. I am not at all worried about this fight though. Like I said, Zelenin is much easier than Mimolef, who I've already beaten with this team, and this team is now higher level than it was when we fought Mimolef. So I start the fight, and everything goes completely according to plan. Zelenin just plays like a weaker version of Mimolef. Her attacks are doing less, and I'm easily able to survive and heal off any damage she deals. Until she goes for Requiem. This is the one thing that makes this fight even remotely challenging. Requiem is another non-elemental insta-kill skill. Only unlike MA, this one affects the entire party, and it also can't be countered by Tetraja. However, unlike MA, there actually is a counter. For whatever reason, Requiem doesn't work if the target is fully immune to both light and dark attacks, which is why it didn't affect Huanglong. Now, while creating a party of demons that are immune to both of these isn't hard, for the protagonist there aren't as many options. The best vest that makes me immune to darkness is the Mesotos vest, but using that would require me to lose the 100 HP bonus that the Thimble vest gives. But there is an accessory that does this too, the Solomon ring. This makes me immune to both dark and light, and it also makes me reflect all non-almighty magic. I'll be honest, I don't like relying on equipment with cheesy effects like this, but it's the end of the game and I don't really have a lot of other options left. I also make a new party, one that is fully immune to both elements this time. I go with Zhao Gongen to replace Ongyoki, and Amon to replace Quetzalcoatl as my healer. Amon is going to be even better than Quetzalcoatl because he has Invitation. This skill revives a dead ally with full HP and summons them back from the comp. Basically, a summon stone as a skill. So allies going down during this battle is going to be much less of a problem. Alright, let's try this again. Much like Mimolef, Pillar Zelenin has no weakness, so elemental coverage isn't going to be necessary here. The best thing to do is attack with your normal attack and hope for a critical hit. Well, that's true for everyone except Doomguy. With him, I just spam Mourn Bullet every turn, and this does around 700 to 1100 damage. While her attacks aren't doing anywhere near as much as Mimolef's were, I still use Salvation with Amon every turn just to be safe. The only threatening skill that she used in the last attempt was Megiddo's Storm, which did almost enough to kill Doomguy in one hit, but now, thanks to the Solomon Ring, it just gets reflected back at her. Once she gets down to below half her HP, she goes for Requiem, and just as I'd hoped, it misses everyone. Also, I was completely unaware of this, but using Requiem makes her weak against everything except electricity for a couple of turns, so yeah, whenever she uses that, go nuts. However, there is still one other problematic skill that I have to worry about. Sinner's Song. This is an almighty attack that has a small chance to charm the party. In this attempt, she's been going for it every now and then, but it wasn't until she started to get low where it actually succeeded in charming my party members. Thankfully, the first time she uses this, it charmed everyone except for Amon, who can heal. At least that's what I would have said if he had the chance to go before Huanglong killed Doomguy with a normal attack. Okay, let's try this one more time. This time, I'm just so frustrated that I play even more aggressively than I did before, but it seems to be exactly what I needed to do. I just attack and heal every turn while she goes for Wave of Death, Requiem, and Megiddo's Storm. When she gets low on HP, I make sure to cast Braveheart to protect myself from Sinner's Song, and toward the end, she just starts spamming it. And even when Braveheart isn't active, she doesn't get the charm. At least not until she's at just barely a few pixels of health. Fortunately, I saw this coming, so I survive with Bite the Bullet. Then God Hand activates, curing Zhao Gongen. Now, I probably could finish her off here, but given what happened in the last couple of attempts, I'm not risking it. So, I heal up with a Beat of Life. She then uses Requiem, then Zhao Gongen attacks, but he misses! But then Blitzkrieg activates, and Huanglong finishes her off. Alright, now there's a little bit of dungeon crawling left before the final boss. However, if you're feeling up to it, there are some other areas you can explore in the back. These lead to New Game Plus exclusive bosses. I won't be doing these because you pretty much need to grind up to level 99 and have your party stats entirely maxed out to even stand a chance against these bosses. But there are some pieces of equipment you can find here, like the Futsu no Mitama, which is better than the Ama no Mi sword, and the Aftokratoras, which is better than the gun I currently have. Once I have those, there's nothing left to do except challenge the final boss. We go inside the door, and we see the three wise men, and they use the cosmic fruit to turn into Shekinah. So, Shekinah at the start plays a lot like Mimolef. She has a wide variety of magic attacks that are extremely powerful. I'm not sure if they're stronger than Mimolef's attacks, but either way, they're doing a lot of damage to my party members that don't null them. Every demon in my party has Life Surge, and even with this, they're just barely able to survive Shekinah's attacks. But as long as they don't die, I can either use Amon or Doomguy to heal every turn. The only move that's kind of a problem is Divine Pain, which is basically anti-Tikton, which is a heavy almighty attack that lowers everyone's stats. This on its own isn't strong enough to kill anyone, but if she follows it up with another attack after the defense drop, it will be. So I either have to use Silent Prayer or a Dakunda Stone every time she uses this. If I had to compare this to another boss in the series, I'd say it's kind of like a slightly harder version of Nyx from Persona 3. And I say this because, well, if you play Persona 3, you'll know that during her fight, Nyx will change arcanas and have similar properties and attacks to the boss of the corresponding arcana that you fought earlier in the game. That's exactly what Shekinah does here. After a few turns, she'll use either 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th fruit, and she'll have the same resistances, weaknesses, and attacks of the bosses that you fought to get that piece of the fruit. I mean, the game tells you that, so I don't know why I'm explaining it, but this is why coverage is important here. Your attacks aren't going to be doing a lot on their own, so you're going to need to rely on your co-op attacks to deal damage. While she'll still go for her own attacks most of the time, sometimes she'll go for the attacks of the bosses that she's copying. And this is actually a good thing because even though this is the late game, these attacks are only as powerful as they were on the bosses when you fought them earlier in the game. Everyone in my party except for Amon has a fire skill, so when she uses First Fruit and copies Anahita, I'm able to do some pretty staggering damage for this being the final boss. I mean, just look at that damage. By the time she changes by going for Third Fruit, she's down to about just a third of her HP. Unfortunately, in this form, she's only weak against ice, and the only ones with ice attacks are Doomguy and Amon, and I need Amon to heal, so that's not really going to work. But Doomguy's ice attack is doing a ridiculous amount of damage, and this is able to get her down to just a quarter of her HP. Once she's at this point, she'll call Demeter, who will sacrifice herself to heal her, and this will enter her second phase. Now, on a surface level, this phase may seem pretty similar to her first. Her stats are the same, even her design is the same, and she has many of the same moves. But she also has some new ones, like Heaven's Arrow, which actually kills Zhao Gongen on the first use, but you'll also probably notice that your attacks are doing a lot less damage than they were before. On their own. Until she goes for one of her fruits, there's nothing you can do. But once she does, and you can strike her weakness, your attacks won't be doing a lot, but your co-op attacks will be doing much more. The first one she uses is Second Fruit, where she's weak against electricity. Only Zhao Gongen knows an electric move, and the move itself only does 4 damage, but the co-op attack does almost 1500. That is insane. That's more than a tenth of her max HP in a single attack. This is why coverage is more important than anything else. You may have been able to get through her first phase with nothing but almighty, physical, and gun attacks like you did Mimolef, but without elemental coverage here, you won't stand a chance against Shekina's second form. Aside from charming Huanglong with Alluring Squall and taking out Amon once, this second phase goes amazingly. By the time she changes again, she's at about a third, and this time she uses 6th Root to copy Maria. The first move she uses here is Consuming Light, which is that move that makes everyone weak against light. That wasn't a problem during Maria's fight, but it is kind of a problem here because I don't actually have a demon with Tetraja anymore. I didn't think I would need it because everyone on my team is immune to light, but I guess I should have thought more about that before starting. Thankfully, I have a few Tetraja stones, so I just used those instead. This fight continues to go well until she goes for Chaotic Torah. What does this do? Well, it reflects all attacks from party members that are Chaos aligned. Yeah. Ever heard of an attack that reflects attacks based on the enemy's alignments? The worst part is that she uses this in the middle of the turn, so I've already selected my attacks and I can't cancel them, so Doomguy uses Frigid Shot, which gets reflected, and he dies. That was bullcrap, even for SMT standards. Now, when she goes for this move, it's probably going to catch you off guard, and I'm not just talking about right there when she used it in the middle of a turn. I mean, even when you have a chance to do something about it, you're probably going to be using a team of demons of the same alignment. I mean, that's how you've been playing, and that's how the game has encouraged you to play up until now. And you might be thinking that you can just wait it out and then attack, but nope, that's not going to happen. You're going to have to pull out any demons of different alignments that you have and attack with them. Though, I imagine most of them will probably just be crappy demons that you recruited on the way here. Having co-op enhanced W does help a little because it allows the protagonist to join in even when co-op is initiated by a demon of another alignment, and thankfully the Torah doesn't protect from co-op damage, but still. Unfortunately, there isn't much more I can do in the way of preparing aside from grinding, and before I resort to that, I do want to give this battle a few more attempts. For the second attempt, things go about the same way they did before, only slightly worse. I'm still doing a lot of damage, but Amon and Zhao Gongen both get taken out once, bringing them to their Endure skills. After the second phase starts, Zhao Gongen gets taken out again by a Heaven's Arrow, so I have to have Amon bring him back with an invitation. When she uses First Fruit, I use Assailment, and a co-op attack from Huanglong's Augidine does over 2,000 damage. But after that, she uses Cositus, which seals Zhao Gongen's Miragidine. Once this wears off, though, I'm able to get in some pretty good damage and get her down to about a third again. But then she goes for Hellish Spurt and takes out Zhao Gongen again. She then uses 4th Fruit to copy Zeus, and I bring back Zhao Gongen again, and the first turn after she switches to Zeus, My attacks do enough damage that her health bar is now in the red, but she goes for Soul Canis, that move that locks all stat changes in place. Now, I'm expecting her to go for Chaotic Torrent any second, but I decide to play it safe and use Assailment to see if I can finish her off. I do this because it will increase my allies' attack power, but Doomguy won't be attacking. So even if she uses it and makes them knock themselves out, my protagonist will survive and I'll still have a chance. I have Zhao Gongen and Huanglong use their wind attacks, and the first one does almost 2,500 damage, and it finishes her off. Not only were we able to beat Shekinah without buffs, but we did it without her using any of the Torah moves a single time. We get the Cosmic Fruit, and by combining it with the Cosmic Eggs, we use them to unleash the Schwarzwelt on the rest of the planet. And then the credits roll. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It is possible to beat SMT Strange Journey without buffs or debuffs. In fact, not only is it possible, I would even argue it's actually a good strategy. Strange Journey is a much more, I don't want to say slower paced, but it's much less kill or be killed than Nocturne. You're not able to farm extra turns the same way you are in Nocturne, and while buffs definitely do help, the bosses are able to counter them much better than they are in Nocturne. By playing without buffs, you don't have to worry about that, and the less turns you're using to set up buffs, the more turns you have to attack, and in most cases, you'll be able to take out the enemies before they can do anything really devastating. Now, normally this is where I would start to wrap things up, but let's stick around for the after credit scene.
さ